In this video, you'll be learning about the KWL Plus strategy. I'll explain the how-to of the strategy, then provide some examples. You'll then be able to reflect on how to implement this practice in your own classroom.
The KWL chart is a structured way to activate background knowledge of students, spark their curiosity, and help students track their learning. It also helps teachers determine what might be misconceptions that students have before they start into a topic or a unit. So it's great for guiding inquiry-based instruction and helping students take ownership of their learning process. This is on page 119 of the literacy book. So if you want to see the one-pager in detail, you can go there. The KWL chart follows 4 simple steps. So the first one is to determine what students know. So they begin by brainstorming what they already know about the topic, and this helps them activate prior knowledge as well as make initial connections. Then they go into what they want to know. So this is where they can start to generate questions. So they list the questions. This kind of helps guide the purpose for their learning. And it's good to encourage the students to ask open-ended and critical thinking questions so that they can be more engaged in the topic as they go throughout the unit. And then the L is for what they learned. So this is where you can add the learning as they go. If they answer one of the questions, you can put the answer up there, and they answer their own questions and add new discoveries. You can also add to the K and the W's as you go through the unit as well. The plus is the bonus part of these charts, and this is where they extend their learning. So you can encourage students to synthesize their learning, extend it. They might summarize key takeaways, draw conclusions, or even identify new areas that they want to explore. This is where you can make some choices for what you think your students need. So this helps build a deeper understanding for students, and they can track their progress in their learning throughout the unit. So the way that you can, the reason why it's an effective tool is because it activates the background knowledge. It encourages student-driven inquiry by having the students set their own learning goals for what they want to know. It helps foster metacognition because students are reflecting on their learning process. It also supports differentiated instruction because you have students engaging at various levels. And then the synthesis is the extra step, so it reinforces deeper understanding of the strategies. Here are a couple examples of how a KWL chart is used in the high school level, in the high school classrooms. We have an Algebra 1 example, and this was at the beginning of a unit for multi-step equations. So the teacher had the students brainstorm what they knew about multi-step equations or what they knew about equations, period, and they came up with that information, and then what they wanted to know about solving multi-step equations. And then as they went throughout the unit and near the end, they started putting up what they've learned. So misconceptions were clarified, the process was gone over, and then at the end it seemed, I'm reading it. At the end they did the plus, and that was a synthesis of how the students would go about solving them and what they had learned about the multi-step equations. And so this worked as a whole class formative check, the KWL chart did, and then she had the students write up their individual synthesized information so that she could do that as a formative check before moving on. On the left, this came from a earth science class that I actually taught when I was asked to step in for about a week when the teacher was gone. And so they were starting to learn about nuclear fusion, and we needed to establish a baseline for what they knew or what they assumed to know about nuclear fusion. And I needed to be able to pass on the information to the teacher when they came back so they knew where the students were at. So they kept in their notebooks their own version of the KWL chart, and then so they had an individual accountability level. We had these smaller ones done for small groups so that the small groups could synthesize their information. And then we did a large one for the whole class, for each class period. So then the small groups would contribute to the whole class one after, at the end of each class period. And so I was the scribe for this one, this small group. And this is what they came up with their know and their want to know and what they learned throughout the unit. And then we did generate some more questions. So those were things that they continued into the next week when the teacher came back. And then they had their summary at the end for the basic process of what they had learned nuclear fusion was. Some ways that you can adapt the KW strategy. It works really well for whole class. It also works for small group. It also works for individual instruction. So it can be created at multiple levels. It's whatever you determine is appropriate. You can do a gallery walk of the KWL charts. So if you have them create them in small groups, then they can post their charts and you can have the students rotate around the room and read their peers' responses. This encourages peer learning and discussion and helps foster some more connections amongst the students. You can let them doodle or draw or sketch on them. So if they can't quite put the words to it, they can do a drawing. You can also add an H, which is helpful if you're trying to practice students citing textual information. So how did the students or how will the students find the information? And so this helps document their research process. You can also encourage multiple tiers of questions. So you can challenge them to go use Bloom's taxonomy to expand their thinking or other question stems just to get them to think deeper about it. You can also require text citations in the L column. So when they put down something they have learned, you can have them cite it or support it with evidence from their texts that they've read, the experiments they've done, the primary sources that they've gone to. Wherever they learned that information, you can have them cite that, which is really powerful as well. And so these help make sure that the KWL chart is accessible, engaging, and rigorous for all the students. So the KWL chart is very simple. It's one that's been around forever. It's not often used at the high school level, but it's really powerful when it's used. It encourages students to take ownership of their learning. It gives them a structure in which to think about their learning, so the what they know, what they want to know, what they've learned, and how they can extend their learning. And it gets them to engage and reflect and synthesize the new information. It really is a powerful tool to help students activate their background knowledge so that they are able to really take their new information, their new learning, and put it into their long-term memory as they continually go back to the KWL chart. So try using it in your classroom, see how it transforms student learning. Thanks for watching, and happy teaching.